questions. We'll open the floor to Mr. Aitchison for 6 minutes. Mr. Aitchison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gentlemen, thank you all for being here. First thing I'd like to do, actually, aside from thanking you for being here in person, which is very important, especially on a winter day, would you be able to table with the committee a list of every project funded either with grants or loans through the National Housing Strategy, broken down by the various different programs and by municipality generally? Is that a list you could give us?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that. I'm wondering, and I'm glad that the chair started this out with discussion of the frustrations that a lot of Canadians have had trying to deal with this program, and I read what you were going to say before the plan changed, and I'm pleased to read that you have simplified the processes, because I'm sure you can imagine there are a lot of examples, particularly of community organizations that have just given up. I can give you a couple of examples in my writing. Community Living South Muskoka had the land ready to go. It was zoned. Municipalities were all ready. Everything was ready to go. They went through a couple of years of that process, and then when it got to the CMHC, they gave up, and they sold the land. That was pretty tragic. The minister was actually just in Sault Ste. Marie announcing funding for a really cool project that I think we should be doing literally across this country, the redevelopment of a legion. Legions are, facing their age as structures, and their organizations are changing, and these are great opportunities. Former Liberal member of Parliament, Dennis Mills, has got a project in Bala, Ontario, at the Legion property. Great, huge chunk of land. The municipality's got everything zoned and ready to go. He's not giving up, because he's like a dog with a bone. He will not give up, but he has given up on the CMHC and this government for sure. He just doesn't get it. He doesn't understand why it's so difficult. And of course I recognize that you got to be careful with taxpayers' money. But when I started to look through just the National Housing Co-Investment Fund, I started to go through the checklists, and of course there's the integrity declaration. There's the purpose of the funding. If you're eligible, you got to go through that checklist, and then of course there's a lovely spreadsheet where you see if it's feasible or not. Then of course there's a minimum environmental and accessibility instructions that seem to go above and beyond building codes, and it made me realize why Covenant House. When I went to visit Covenant House in Vancouver, amazing story, a fabulous facility they've got there. They built this new structure, and I asked them, "Did you get any funding from CMHC?" And they said, "Yes, we got $12 million. Isn't that incredible? Now, it was an $80 million or $100 million project, but that's great. They got $12 million. It cost them $1 million in consulting fees to work through the quagmire that is the process known as the CMHC. So, Community Living South Muskoka didn't have that kind of money to work through the quagmire, so they gave up and sold the land. I want to know if you can tell us what you've done to simplify the process, so that organizations that don't have Ryan Reynolds, sponsoring them and raising the awareness about the importance of the organization and the resources to spend that kind of money on consulting fees and lobbyists. What have you done to make it easier for those community organizations that literally are on the front lines of this issue and want to make the change that every community in our country needs? What have you done to make it easier?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. So over the last year, in response to the question, we implemented a new process in the co-investment fund, which was a contribution-only stream, where we turned around applications in as little as 4 weeks. Those were targeted specifically at the smaller not-for-profits to make it simpler. There was not a loan component associated with those, and we were granting up to $125,000 a door for those particular ones. So that was in recognition of the lessons learned around dealing with those organizations, and as well dealing with the level of affordability. So that's just one example. I would say that another example is that we've worked very closely to reduce the amount of paperwork and legal requirements that are to sign the final agreement, and to improve it as a process. So those are just two examples that we've looked at. The third thing I would say is that we took the lessons learned from some programs and applied it to the rapid housing. And that's an example of where we've taken our processes and really really reduce them dramatically to enable for ease of application.
So can I quickly jump in there and ask then, based on what you said about the some of these projects being turned around in 4 weeks, that almost sounds too good to be true. I'll take you at your word. I believe you. In your list that you provide this committee of all the projects, can you identify the timelines on each of those projects as well? Application point to delivery point?
I think we should be able to,
If you
because
can,
we do
or at
measure-
least, at the very least, give me a list of the projects that you're able to turn around in 4 or 5 weeks.
We do, sorry. Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
We do measure our turnaround times
Okay.
across all of our application processes, so we should provide at least the overview of the turnaround times.
Okay, no, that would be fantastic. I think I'm almost out of time here, but and so I'll leave it at that because I want to come back to the headline number of $82 billion or $89 billion. We're never exactly sure where we are, but I want to talk to you a little more about that as well. But I think I'll have another round. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aitchison. Mr. Collins, for 6 minutes, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and welcome, guests. My first question is around the Federal Housing Advocate's recent recommendation where she talked about we're at the 5-year point with the National Housing Strategy. And her recommendation is that